Hey humans, it's Hannah. Welcome back to the second channel. This is video 4 in our spooktacular. However, it's probably been renamed. That's Winnie, of course. And yeah, directions for how to send in your own scary story are always down below in the description box. Without further ado, let's get right into it. This first story starts, "Hi Hannah, I suppose you've heard this before, but I love your channel and I love your clear-headed and reasonable take on anything that may seem paranormal." Thank you. "And I love your voice. It's really soothing and reassuring despite the sometimes awful nature of the stories you tell. Feel free to make up names for us if you think it will make the story clearer, but I prefer to remain anonymous." No worries. I'm also glad that you like my voice, that sometimes I have a soothing voice, because I have heard people say they fall asleep to my videos. I like it. I think that's fun. I like falling asleep to people too. So I love that for us. Okay. "My story is hard to categorize. Let's just say that while I'm fascinated by the possibility of the paranormal and the unknown, I do believe that things happen and I'm not really afraid of any of it. Now, my story happened to me and my husband over 30 years ago. This was the time well before cell phones. At the time, we had been married for a couple years. I was working in a bakery in a small city and my husband worked as a drywall installer. On this particular day, he was working in a small town about 13 miles away from where we lived. We only had one vehicle and I had taken it to go to work. He had been taken to work by his coworker who left him at the job site to go work at a different job site. The job site my husband was working on was a new home being built on a large lot in a new subdivision that had only a couple other houses built, but not near the one he was working on. I had been at work for a couple of hours and I was at the counter alongside a coworker who was an elderly lady. We were both cake decorators. Oh, that's cool. We were about 4 or 5 feet apart from each other with a rolling table between us that held bowls of frosting and other supplies we used. I was working on a cake order and my coworker was rummaging around under the counter for something when she straightened up and said, "What?" I looked up and said, "Excuse me?" She said, "What did you want?" I said, "Nothing. I didn't say anything." She looked behind her and then she looked at me and she said, "Didn't you just come up behind me and say my name?" Now, in order to come up behind her, I would have had to walk about 3 or 4 feet to the end of the table and walk around it to come up to her, or I would have had to push the table out of the way, which I had not done as I was busy. I shook my head and said, "I haven't said a word." She put her hands on her hips and said, "You didn't just come up behind me while I was crouched down and say my name practically in my ear?" I put down my decorating bag and said, "I have not moved from this spot in over 20 minutes. I don't know if she believed me, but she said that she definitely heard my voice say her name. No one was around us, no other coworkers, no customers. I thought that was weird, but I thought maybe she had had some kind of moment. Later that day, I went to go pick up my husband from his job site to go home. He met me at the door of the house he was working at, and the first words out of his mouth were, "Did you come out here earlier today?" Oh no, I was surprised because it's about a 20-minute drive to his job site from our home, and I had worked until just before I had come to pick him up. I said, "No, why?" He said that earlier in the day, he was working in the upstairs room of the house. He heard a vehicle pull into the yard and he thought it sounded like our truck. He glanced out the window but didn't see a vehicle in the yard. Then he heard the front door open and he said he heard me, my voice, call out his name. He called out, "Hey babe, what are you doing here? I'm upstairs. Come on up." He thought I had gotten off of work early and had come to join him for lunch. He said he listened for my footsteps coming up the stairs, but there was nothing. He was confused, so he came out of the room he was working in and looked down into the living room area from the upstairs landing. He had a clear view of the front door, which was shut and no one was there. He thought, did she go back to the truck? And he went downstairs and looked out into the yard and there was no vehicle. He went outside and there was no vehicle in sight anywhere in the subdivision. He went through every room but didn't see anyone. But he said he clearly heard me call his name and he had clearly heard the vehicle pull in. He remembered hearing the vehicle's door slam shut and remembered hearing the front door of the house open. I have no explanation. I'm definitely not a ventriloquist, and to my recollection, there was nothing going on that would have caused me or anyone else any concern or stress. To this day, we still don't know why my coworker and my husband heard me say their names. I hope you enjoyed the story. It's one we definitely still wonder about. Thanks for listening, and that is from Anonymous. Thank you so much. What strikes me the most is that you said that this was from 30 years ago and both of you still remember it to this day. I don't know. For some reason, the stories that happened many, many years ago, but people still remember them like really clearly, really get me, because it means that it was more significant in your life. Because if it wasn't significant, it would have just kind of been lost with time. That sounds like a mimic to me. Now, I don't know if mimics are real or not, just like I don't know if ghosts are real or not, but it sounds like a telltale sign of a mimic, that you had a mimic that day or something and was going to mess with your coworker and your husband. That's the only thing that sounds plausible to me, especially because there were no cell phones around during that time. But like the fact that it happened twice in one day is just absolutely bananas. Thank you so much. I don't think we've gotten any other mimic stories on this. I'm sure they have, and I haven't read them yet, but I haven't read any mimic stories out loud for this channel yet. So thank you so much. Okay, story number 2 starts, hey, I sent this email. Oh, I did want to include this note for a reason. So, hey, I sent this email on August 8th, 2024. And today I watched your scary stories video and saw that there had to be a specific subject name. So I'm resending it in hopes you'll see it. I wanted to add that in because just to note for everybody, those are the instructions to make it go into a certain folder in my inbox so that it goes right into that folder. Because if you don't put scary story in the subject line, it just goes to my regular business inbox, which is fine. I'll still get it. All I do is click move to scary stories inbox. That's all I do. So if you ever accidentally send it without that in the subject line, it's not a big deal whatsoever. It's just one of the small things to make my life easier so it doesn't mess up my regular work inbox that I do with my management company and stuff if I'm getting dozens of emails in there from scary stories and stuff. So no big deal, just for future reference. Okay. Hi, Hannah. I recently found your channel and binge watched your TikTok explanation videos. I am a believer in the existence of ghosts, but not in the human form that most of the TikToks show. I have to excuse myself in advance. I'm not American or British. I'm from Bulgaria and my English may not be perfect. No worries. We will make it through. The story. My uncle, my dad's brother, had brain cancer. It was getting very bad and we knew that he wasn't going to get better, and as horrible as it sounds, we expected him to pass away any minute. On the 8th of May 2013, my dad's birthday, my dad went to see my uncle and bring him cake, even though he couldn't speak anymore and he couldn't eat. I didn't go with my dad, and to this day I regret that. My dad came back home feeling very down and understandably didn't feel like celebrating at all, so we had dinner and went to bed. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. It was a school day, and I heard my parents in the hallway talking and going around. I got up and went to check on what was going on. My mom told me that my uncle died in his sleep that night. My parents were already dressed in black, and my dad was talking to the funeral agency on the phone. He had visibly cried. When we hung up, we hugged, and he told me that my uncle had waited to pass away on the 9th of May so that it wouldn't be on my dad's birthday, and his eyes became wet again. Oh, I don't know why, but it felt so hard for me to cry. That was the first time a relative had died, and I think I just couldn't believe that it was true. I didn't go to school that day, and my dad, my mom, and I spent the day together, basically arranging the funeral and calling friends and family to tell them that my uncle had died. The next day was the day of the funeral. Very awful day. Remembering it now, it looked so gray in my memory, even though it was sunny outside. We were dressed up and we were going to my uncle's apartment where his body was after the funeral agency cleaned and dressed him. We were leaving the living room when a thin book fell from the bookcase. The bookcase was angular and it was open on both sides, so the book just slid right off the shelf. This had happened before, not very often, but had happened, so we didn't think much of it at first, although it was strange. But when we saw what the book that was behind the one that fell was, it was the book that my dad illustrated. Dad and my uncle were/are very talented artists, but only my uncle really made it in his career. The book was called something like Smile/Jokes from the Court. And of course, we took it as a sign from my uncle that we shouldn't be so somber and that he maybe wanted us to celebrate his life when he was healthy and is actually himself. I don't know if that was really him. This is not the ghost/spirit sighting that I want to tell you about, but it kind of helped us feel that maybe he is with us at that moment. I think that it was the first moment that I cried after he died. We went to his apartment. His wife and my cousins were there too. They acted very unbothered. His wife couldn't choose what to wear and couldn't do her hair. My oldest cousin was putting makeup on in front of the whole family while my grandma was unstoppably crying. This is very bizarre behavior, and I still can't believe it to this day. I totally understand that, especially if you were young, but just remember, people just act in different ways. When my grandpa died and my nana was grieving his death, they had been married over 50 some years, and she was also just in shock during his funeral. Like, you wouldn't know that anything was wrong. She didn't cry. She didn't shed a tear. She was just happy as can be and was just so jovial with us all. And all she was like, oh, he would have been so proud of you guys. She loves you guys. I didn't see her cry once. And of course, it was the worst thing that had ever happened to her. Like, that was like, my grandparents married over 50 years and were still so in love. Like, they were still obsessed with each other. It was so cute. It was like the love story of the century. And she was absolutely devastated, but was just in shock. So I think that's important to remember, that if people are putting on makeup or trying to do their hair and can't do it, it's because they're trying to deal with it in the way that their body is responding. Everybody responds differently, you know? Anyway, I saw my uncle. He was on the bed and he really didn't look like himself. That funeral is still the saddest moment of my life. My grandma was crushed, and at some point she passed out, and there was no one who could console her. After the funeral, the closest family members gathered in my grandparents' house. My cousins and their mother didn't want to come, and we sat around the table and looked at photo albums from my uncle and dad's childhood, from holidays that we've been to together, and we tried to make our last memory of him to be the moments when he was at his best. My grandma was still very sad and couldn't stop crying, so she got up from the table and went to the kitchen, part of the room, to take something. I went with her and just hugged her. It felt like the only thing she needed. While I was hugging her, I was facing the door in the hallway, which has a big window on it. I saw a ball of light. Not very bright, but bright enough. Its size was a little smaller than a soccer ball. It stayed there for a few seconds and slowly moved in direction to the entrance of the door. I was stunned, but not scared. I know and still know in my heart that it was my uncle's spirit in the purest form. I went to see if the entrance door was open, just to make sure that it wasn't some light trick, but there was no way this ball of light was reflected. It was around lunchtime, so it wasn't car lights. I told everyone what I saw, and they all believed me. It felt like my uncle just stopped by for a last goodbye. This is the only time that something like this has happened to me, and I don't even feel right to call what I saw a ghost. It was more like energy, like a spirit. I would agree with that. I think that's highly likely. My grandparents from my mom's side have both died, and I didn't see anything. I also had to sleep in the room where my grandpa's casket was before his funeral. This is a Bulgarian tradition to have the body of the person in his home, and this to be the place from which they are escorted to the graveyard. And I didn't see or hear anything. It just felt very odd sleeping in the room and knowing where my lifeless grandpa was. I am a believer that we are not just a cluster of molecules, but also don't believe that the spirits of the people that die stay in a place for long. I think they just fly into nature and take a new life form. Kind of like the end. Actually, never mind. That's a spoiler for a TV show. Never mind. I don't want to spoil anything. Some of you guys might know the show that I'm probably talking about, but I just realized I was going to spoil for something. So never mind. Never mind. Sorry for the long story. It just felt right to explain the whole feeling and situation. I shared this story not because I want you to read it in a video, but because I saw that you're open, but not blindly open to the possibility of supernatural things existing. And I hope that this will make you believe even more. And I'm going to keep that person anonymous as well, because they kind of made their name in a different signature. So just in case. Thank you so much for your story. That's such a, I like the nice ghost stories too, are really nice. I love that there was just something that you guys kind of just felt him there, and it wasn't necessarily scary or crazy or anything like that. I think those stories are just as lovely. Okay, moving on to story number 3. This story is going to be a little different. I don't think this one is paranormal, but this is more on the chronic health and American terrible American health system story. So let's get into it. Hello. I have been subscribed to your channel for several years, I think. I appreciate that you critically assess spooky media. First of all, I'm a 47-year-old woman with both autism and ADHD, and I'm also slightly plus sized. So I have a long history of not being taken seriously or being dismissed by medical providers. I have experienced various types of chronic health issues throughout my entire adult life, most of which have never been properly diagnosed or treated. I am also sort of accustomed to having any symptoms somehow linked to my weight, whether it actually is related or not. Ooh. Back in 2019, I landed in the ER because I was experiencing excruciating abdominal pain. I was diagnosed with gastritis and given a proton pump inhibitors, I think Prilosec, PPIs. I'm on a lot of those too. After this point, I began to suffer from GERD, acid reflux, and took a variety of different PPI medications to management. I feel you on that. A lot of you guys know I have Crohn's disease. I have IBS. My entire esophagus and all the way down just doesn't work because I also have GERD. I am on 80 milligrams of pantoprazole every single day, and I take Pepcid as needed, but I take 80 milligrams of pantoprazole every day, and I have to do it twice in a day at different times of the day to manage my GERD. There's a surgery actually to treat GERD, and it's laparoscopic, and they just go in to reinforce the sphincter to keep acid from going up your throat, and it says like a 95% success rate, and it is so hard to get this surgery. It is so hard to convince doctors to let you get this surgery. They just increase your PPIs, which are the strong antacid medication / prescriptions. They just keep increasing them until you're taking a ridiculous amount. It's so frustrating. I understand you so bad. And I understand what GERD feels like. GERD, for the record, for people that don't know, if you don't have GERD, it is not heartburn. It's related to heartburn, but it is not the same thing. Having heartburn is just like that burning in your chest. GERD is full on, you're sick. Like you nauseous, you feel like you're going to throw up, your entire throat. It feels like there's a literal frog in your throat. You cannot swallow. It hurts so bad to swallow. All you want to do is just spit up and puke, and it goes on for hours. It's terrible. GERD attacks are the worst thing of all time. So, oh my God, I empathize with you so much. The person that wrote this in. Anyway, okay. Whew. The symptoms of GERD gradually become more severe over a period of 5 years. Symptoms include, but weren't limited to, constantly clearing my throat, excessive mucus, choking spells, worsening of my asthma, and aspirating on my own saliva, especially at night. Oh my God, me too! That also happened to me for the longest time until I switched my PPI medication and got a better PPI medication. I would also wake up, or I'd be like falling asleep, and I just randomly choke on my own spit and have to like get up, and like you literally feel like you're gonna die. The other one, sorry, tangent. The other one is that I had a cough for the longest time. It solved once I started the medications, but there is like, if you have a random cough, undiagnosed cough, and you don't know where it came from and you can't seem to get rid of it, ask your doctor about GERD because it could be related to GERD or some other gastrointestinal issue. Okay. Sorry. Anyway, in the last year, these symptoms progressed to difficulty swallowing bread or meat, sores in my mouth and on my tongue, severely dry lips, general fogginess, forgetfulness, irritability, insomnia. Worse than that, it was becoming almost impossible to mask my ADHD and autism. I teach special education and hold many IEP meetings with parents. I am also in the process of writing my doctoral dissertation, so managing my ADHD and ASD is kind of a priority. Oh my gosh, so much going on. It's so bizarre to me too, because we know that our stomachs are connected to our brains, you know, that a lot of the stuff that affects our stomachs, like that's why when we have like huge bouts of anxiety, why we sometimes get diarrhea or why our entire body clams up and stuff like that. And why you feel those physical symptoms of anxiety is because our, you know, our brains and our stomachs are connected. And it's so interesting that you say that the GERD also then makes it hard to mask your ADHD and autism, causes insomnia, forgetfulness, fogginess, irritability, all that. So bananas. Bear in mind that I have visited my primary care physician over a dozen times during the past 5 years in order to pursue treatment for these symptoms to no avail. PCP is sweet and a little derpy. I only stuck with him because he is the least fat-phobic doctor available to me at my local facility. Fast forward to May of 2024, I began to experience the most concerning symptom of all, shortness of breath after minimal exertion. My hobby is nature photography, so I have been an active hiker for many years. I've had a summer trip planned, but now I could barely walk across my house without feeling winded. Oh no, and they're all gonna say that it's because of your weight, aren't they? Oh, that's so fucking frustrating. Like, ignore what you actually do. Ignore all the physical activity you do, or maybe, probably all the nutritious food that you eat. Doesn't matter if you look a certain way. Okay. I hadn't had my period in over 6 months. I thought, or more likely desperately hoped, that all of this could be a result of menopause. Sure, I was a little young, but large hormonal changes can absolutely account for symptoms like these. I suggested to the derpy doctor that I see an OBGYN, and he agreed. During the first week of June, I saw a nurse practitioner. She patiently let me ramble on about everything I had been experiencing. She then ordered a shit ton of blood work, like the most blood work I've ever had in my life. I fully expected the blood work to reveal that I was slightly menopausal and that I would maybe take a low dose of hormone replacement to minimize my suffering. Early the next morning, I got a call from the OBGYN's office. I needed to get to the emergency room as soon as possible. Why? My hemoglobin was about a third of what it should be. I needed a blood transfusion immediately. For those who don't know, hemoglobin is responsible for delivering oxygen from the blood to your body's tissues and organs. I went to the ER and they transfused 2 bags of blood. They explained to me that my iron and hemoglobin were practically non-existent and that they were shocked that I hadn't dropped dead from a stroke or cardiac arrest. Oh my gosh. This is not a hyperbole. This is not an exaggeration. The next day, nearly all of my symptoms were gone. Not just better, but gone. 5 years of my life were spent feeling like crap. My doctor had all the information he needed to diagnose iron deficiency anemia, but somehow never did. Without the blood transfusion, I almost definitely would have died, and at some point during the summer. That also is really cuckoo bananas that they didn't ever, your PCP doesn't test your blood. Like, that's their responsibility to take blood samples and make sure that all your levels are okay, especially if you've been complaining that you haven't felt well. The first thing most PCPs are going to do is draw your blood and check your iron levels and shit like that. Instead, I feel like $1 million and looking forward to my trip. And thanks to all the blood work, I have evidence that I have none of the conditions typically associated with obesity, like high cholesterol, diabetes, or thyroid issues. So middle fingers for everyone at my doctor's office. Yes. Hope this story makes the cut. What could be scarier than American healthcare? Julia, she, her, and you can use my name. Thank you so much, Julia. I obviously don't know exactly what you went through with all of that and the hemoglobin, but I can also attest to, obviously I already talked about the GERD and everything, but it sounded like you had so much going on. And it's so hard because it feels like the fat phobia in the medical system that is so prevalent in the medical system prevented you from getting the blood transfusion and the blood work that you needed. And it feels like it was because the OBGYN was not fat phobic and was like, we need to look at other stuff. And it feels like the PCP probably just assumed that because you were plus size, that's why you couldn't walk across the room. Just assumed that you just all of a sudden took a drastic physical turn, even though you are a hiker and a nature photographer and obviously very active. Let me tell you guys something. So as you guys know, I had Crohn's disease. I say that so much, again, only when it's relevant. I'm so sorry. I hate it when YouTubers make everything about themselves, so I will really try not to continue to do this every time. But with Crohn's disease, I lost a shit ton of weight, right? Lost 25 pounds in a few weeks when I was diagnosed. We knew something was wrong, but we were going through the process of getting everything diagnosed, yada, yada, yada. When I went into remission for Crohn's disease and my disease was finally at a place where it is manageable and well maintained with medication, I gained a lot of weight because your body basically freaks out. Your body's like, cool, you just lost all this weight unexpectedly and it messed up my metabolism. And so when I started eating normally again and was able to eat again, first of all, I was starving from being on prednisone so much. But second of all, your body changes its metabolism because it's like, oh no, you starved yourself a few months ago. What if we die? We're going to hold on to every calorie that we can, right? There's like, it's not necessarily being unhealthy or yada, yada, yada. I'm sure some of it has to do with turning 30 and all that too. But I'm sure some of you have noticed too, I gained approximately 30, 40 pounds since starting my channels, and I'm not ashamed of it. I mean, society wants me to be ashamed of it, but I try really hard to be kind to myself and not be ashamed of it and just do my best to be as healthy as I can, because I know my health situation and I know for a fact weight does not always directly correlate with your health. Now, to be fair, I've always been pretty straight sized. I have never been a plus size person. I think I'm a little bit more of like in the mid range now, and I'm very happy with my body now. But even gaining those like around, 30 pounds or whatever, going to the doctor's very different. You feel judged. I feel judged even from that, especially when my PCP, because like she knew me when I was really skinny. And then when I gained weight, she's like, oh, it's just always, you just always feel like it's a thing. I'm just saying, like, even I feel the difference of being slightly bigger than I was before. So I cannot imagine. That's what I mean, is that I cannot imagine. And I so empathize with plus sized people or people that are in bigger bodies, because it is the only thing that medical people see is your outside body, your meat suit. They're like, okay, well, based on the way you look, it could be this, this, and this. And I'm guessing, we all know the thing of like, probably if you had insomnia and a cough and everything, they probably will lose weight and you'll sleep better and crap like that. And that's just not always the case. Okay. Soapbox moment over. Julia, to make this back about you, because this is about you, I am so sorry that you went through that. I 1000% believe you. Nothing about that story, unfortunately, surprises me. That your PCP probably just assumed that because you're slightly plus size, all of it can be attributed to that. And then your OBGYN, who is, I would say OBGYNs, especially female OBGYNs, are probably more likely to be more holistic and also look at other things too. They're more likely to be on the side of women. I'm just so glad that she looked at that and fixed you, and that it was such an easy fix then too. Are you on iron supplements now? Because I have to take iron supplements, and yeah, they're gross, but anyway, Julia. Everybody, please give love to Julia in the comments for what she went through, because nobody deserves to go through that, and it's ridiculous. Okay, I'm going to move on to story number 4 now. All right, this story goes, hello, Hannah. I just want to say that I absolutely love your videos. You're definitely one of my favorite YouTubers. I don't care about remaining anonymous. My name is Jenna, but for privacy, I'll be omitting the names of others involved. This story isn't the scariest or darkest, but disturbing/dark nonetheless, and thank you so much if you read my story. In late September/early October of 2016, I was around 12 years old with many little siblings, aged 2 to 10. My family decided to take a road trip to Southern California. We typically take a trip there every year, and that year was no different. A couple of days before the trip, a nasty stomach virus tore through the family. So the whole drive, people were throwing up every so often. That sounds like my nightmare. Oh my gosh, we arrived at the hotel sick and tired from the drive and decided to call it a night early. The next morning, my younger sister S opened the blinds to the back door. She expected to see a beautiful, peaceful image, but what she found was the opposite. Laying face down in the front of the hotel room was a man, unmoving and still. She shut the blinds. She's just like, nope, not today, Satan, and told the family. We went to take a peek, curiosity of a 12-year-old, and saw the scene. The man had on khaki shorts and wore a dark blue shirt. My dad, who worked in healthcare, wanted to go out there and see if he could somehow do CPR to bring him back to consciousness. My mom and the rest of the family were terrified that foul play was involved and urged him to stay in case the threat was still about. He went out anyway and went to flip the body and start CPR. Oh, Good for your dad. That's so sweet. I understand where your mom's coming from. Like, I don't blame them or judge them for wanting to stay in, because I would be scared too. Like, what if it's a trap? Is usually what I think. Like, what if he's laying there so that somebody can come around the corner? But the fact that your dad was brave and went out there anyway, that is so wholesome. I, last minute, decided to stop looking. I had never seen the face of a dead guy and was terrified as to what it would look like. My older sister was looking, though, and she said that he had rocks imprinted on his face. While my dad was attempting CPR, my mom was calling the hotel and telling them the situation. Soon the hotel management was there, and so were some firefighters. Ultimately, they ruled that the man was dead and had died last night. Oh. He had been drinking and fell off the balcony of his hotel room, landing for my family to discover the next day. What's scary is that my parents were up late the night before, and after all the kids had gone to bed, drinking tea and talking inside. They heard some sort of thud around midnight. Oh, but chalked it up to the others in the hotel making noise. That story is one of my family still recalls regularly, from how we were all sick leading up to the trip and how creepy seeing a dead man was at that age. In my opinion, the only good thing that came out of that situation was that it sparked my interest in all things dark and creepy. Anyway, that's my story. I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you so much for taking the time to read this. Thank you, Jenna. Oh my God, that's the saddest story I've ever heard. That's so sad. I bet your parents felt so guilty too, because they were probably like, if only we had looked out the window, we would have seen him and maybe we could have saved their life. But I hope they don't judge themselves for that, because he probably passed away pretty quickly. Let's be honest, falling drunk like that from a height, you're probably not going to make it for very long. And also, it's still not their fault. Like, they didn't know. And also, we also have the, like, everybody mind your own business mentality here in America. And so that's just so sad. That poor man. I feel so bad for him. That's awful. I hope it was just quick and that he didn't feel any pain or anything. I also, like, traumatizing for you guys as well, especially being so young. I don't think you'd even know what to do. Oof. It's very rare that we see dead bodies. I've only been with somebody when they've passed away, or like literally right after they passed away as well. This was not a family member, and have seen them afterwards. And it just changes you to see somebody without the warmth, without the spark, is just something different, you know? Okay, this is the fifth and last story for today. Hello, Hannah. Just wanted to say I enjoy watching you and your videos on both channels. You're awesome. You can call me B. I'm a female and I've been working retail for 16 years, about to hit 17. I know. Wow. Did not think I would still be in retail, but it's never boring. I have witnessed a lot and had a lot happen to me. Everything from angry Karens, where's the exit, whistled at like I'm a puppy to get my attention, person walking around in a mask. I'm assuming you don't mean a COVID mask, but like a Halloween mask. Older people being creepy. I do not feel safe here. The works. I have not shared this anywhere, but told only a few family members and friends. So now to the story. I bet you are probably one of the toughest, most badass people of all time. Nothing phases you, does it? Like, if you've been doing retail that long, people getting mad at you, confrontation, like, probably doesn't bother you, I would imagine. Like, that's so crazy, but I bet that is a very interesting life that you live. I have worked retail before. Specifically, I worked at TJ Maxx for over a year. Nothing compared to what you've been through, but I understand some of it. I arrived to work early like I always do, with enough time to sit and enjoy the nice peace and quiet for 15 minutes before they let us morning people in. This is a great way to relax before the craziness that is retail. Other cars are in the parking lot because we have people who have to be in extra early to unload the truck. I like to park a bit further away than all the other retail peeps from the door, near a light pole and cart corral, with the cart corral to my left, also the same side as the store, and the light pole to my right with more parking lot. Because it's still very dark out and being near the light makes me feel safer. Also, I can see a lot of surroundings, which is very nice. I'm relaxing when something to my left near the side of the store catches my attention. Looking, I realize it's a guy who came out of nowhere because I did not remember him being near the building when I arrived and parked. He must have come from around the back, or else I would have seen him before. He would walk a bit, then crouch down while looking around, kind of like a person in a video game, or rather what you would think they would look like in real life. Trying not to be seen by the other person but failing, I watch as he continues this on the edge of the building, getting near the side door where they let us early workers in. Then he slowly walks towards one of the empty cars in the parking lot and crouches down so I cannot see him anymore. I start to get nervous that I lost sight of this weird guy. I keep my eyes peeled over where I had last seen him, trying to spot him again, but with every passing minute that I don't, makes me even more nervous. I also know another coworker, A, will arrive soon, and she likes to park near where I lost sight of the guy. Then I noticed him crawling on the ground near the car he's crouched by. I watched as he crawls for a while, then suddenly he jumps up and continues his walking, then crouching thing again. Headlights appear in front of me. It's A. She parks where she always parks, which is very close to where the guy is. I watch him intently, but notice this time it looks like he is holding something in his hands that looks like a gun. He must have been hiding it in his pants and pulled it out for when a second I looked at A's headlights. I watch in horror as the guy takes a very big exaggerated step towards A in her car. When he gets near, I see him drop to the ground out of my eyesight. I start to worry for A and her safety. Should I go to her? I wonder to myself, absolutely freaking out. But worried if I do, I'll get shot. At that moment, I hear A's car start up and she pulls out of the spot fast and parks right by me. We both roll down our windows. Oh, thank God that A's okay. A, looking very scared, asks, "Did you see that guy?" I reply, also scared, "Yes, I've been watching him for a while now. I noticed that he went back to doing his walking and crouching thing, but now he is at the front doors to the building still holding something." A, he started crawling towards my car and I think he has a gun. Me, I could not tell what he was holding. I think we should call the managers to let us in and have them call the cops. A, I'll call and you keep an eye on him. I nod and say I will. The guy is still near the doors, but now pointing the gun around in every direction. It is then I realize that we will have to walk by him to get in. Not close, but close enough. The little door they let us in at is about 15 feet from the main doors. That is still close when it involves a person with a possible gun. Yeah. I think I would have started my car and left. Like I would have gone to another parking lot like blocks away to call the cops. Oh my gosh, you guys are brave. I hear A telling the boss that she got a hold of what is happening. The boss says that she's on her way and the other boss is calling the cops. I really start to worry about walking past him. A lot of what ifs is going through my head and we wait to watch the guy, but I also prepare myself to fight if I have to. He might not shoot and instead run at us. Okay, what do I have that I can use to defend myself? And A, if I have to. My car keys that hold into a fist with the point of the key sticking out from in between my fingers. That's about it. I notice that he has moved a bit further away from the store's entrance. That is a bit better, but I'm still freaking out. The bosses arrive at the side door and let us in. One is on the phone with the cops and the other is holding the door open for us, both watching the guy as well. My heart starts to pound as we get out and start walking towards them. I keep my eyes on the guy as we walk closer and closer to the door, but also closer to him on our right. Once again, preparing myself to fight if I have to, hoping that he stays at the entrance. That walk felt so long and very terrifying. That was probably the longest few minutes of your life. Oh my gosh. By far the longest and freakiest walk to work I've ever had. Once again, if I read one more sentence, my thoughts would match the person writing the story. After what seemed like forever, we made it in safely. Oddly and very thankfully, he did not move from that spot. I later found out from one of the bosses, the cop said that he did not have a real gun, but a toy one, and that they were positive he was high. I want to say thank you, Hannah, for reading this, even if it doesn't make it into an episode, but also to people that might have had a few problems with this. Like, why not stay in the car? Yes, looking back on it, I would have told myself to wait for the cops, but it was a very stressful situation, and that can make you do things that might not be the best decision. It is easy to say when it's not happening to you that this is what I would do, but you do not know that until it happens to you. Please be nice to people that are in or dealing with stressful situations. Every person person is different. I do have more stories like sleep paralysis that I'm planning on sharing. Thank you. And that is from B. Thank you, B. Or if you feel like writing out other stories from your retail shenanigans, I would also very much enjoy reading just random stuff. I would love reading about Karens or any like creepy people that came in and were just really shady. Absolutely bananas. And I agree with you. Again, earlier I said like I would drive to another parking lot and call the cops there or wait there so I wasn't in their line sight. And like, yeah, easy for me to say sitting on the couch in my safe, warm home, you know? And I say that about all situations is like, unless you've been in that exact situation before, you cannot say what you would or wouldn't do. And even if you have been in that exact situation as somebody else, people act differently in different situations. Fight, flight, freeze, and I think there's one other one that I can't remember off the top of my head, but people react differently to stressful situations. So yeah, no judgment whatsoever. I'm glad everybody was okay. And also the answer to so many bizarre stories that I think a lot of people often discount is meth. That's the answer to many things when people be acting cray-cray. You know what I mean? All right, that is gonna be it. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. This has been day 4. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Please subscribe to the channel, trying to get us to 20K if we can. Please subscribe if you like these videos. This is all that we do here, and I will see you all tomorrow. Okay, bye.